Hi there, it's Kamal Fernandez to talk a little bit about reactivity and specifically the course Relabeling Reactivity. So I'm not quite sure where the label or the term reactivity originated from in truth, but it's something that has been used, or a term that's been used to define everything from the overzealous greeter to a dog that's scared and concerned and lacks confidence around people and dogs. And it's something that in truth has frustrated me for a little while because it's that all-consuming umbrella that doesn't give necessarily people like myself, professionals, enough insight into how to help the dog. And it's a label that can often be attached with stigma and can be a source of anxiety and stress for the owners to think that they have this dog with this shroud of shame on their shoulders. I have put together a course that hopefully will empower people to change the life that they lead with their dogs by teaching simple core skills. And that's the huge difference from this course to others, in that I endeavour to simplify the notion of reactivity. For me, reactivity is the word used to describe behaviour that is largely responsive to other dogs or things in their environment. And it's things that most people would consider problematic. So for example, the dog that barks at lunges at the cyclist, the dog that flies out with the fast-moving dog or the vehicle, or the dog that goes for another dog that invades its personal space. Those are all things that people would define as reactive. And it's something that, as I said, has been used as an all-consuming label to describe a variation of behaviours. For me, it's about changing and reframing how we look at these dogs. And they're not problem dogs. They're not dogs that should be, shunned from the world and they should be ostracized. We need to understand them better and to equip their owners with skills from a training point of view and from a self-help and self-care that's going to help them look at their dogs differently and therefore overcome issues that their dogs may have. For me, the causes of reactivity can be defined by 5 key things. And if we as dog owners, dog trainers and dog lovers can identify which one is applicable to our dog, we can help them overcome the issues. Often, the dog's behaviour is actually a symptom of an underlying issue. And rather than dealing with the symptom, we need to a certain degree, step backwards and actually build confidence in our dogs. A lot of reactivity can be fear-based. Our dogs just haven't been socialised properly, or they haven't been appropriately socialised to develop the skill set to deal with other dogs and to read the weird and wonderful body languages and expressions and greetings that other dogs offer. The other version of reactivity is motion sensitivity, where dogs can be triggered by instinctive responses to chase, capture, hunt, and possibly kill things. And we've exploited that to our gains with dogs. We've created dogs that served a purpose, and those behavioural traits in domestic situations aren't always needed or wanted or desired. As dog owners and dog trainers, we need to be compassionate of that, of what we've essentially created and used within our dogs, and how that can affect us on a day-to-day basis. So for example, I have Border Collies. Border Collies are genetically hardwired to want to chase things and to be excited by things that move fast in front of them. If we look it back to what they are genetically, they are herding dogs, dogs that are pre-programmed to want to chase things and move them and to intently stare at them. And those are all part of the predatory sequence, which we've largely exploited as human beings. But we've also modified the breed so that they can live in domestic situations. So my dogs have been taught to ignore things that move in front of them at speed and to listen irrespective of the thing that moves in front of them at speed. So it means that I can live a life where my dogs can go anywhere and be safe and be sound and be socially acceptable when there are distinct triggers in their environment that could cause them to have a genetic hardwired response. It's not to give in to that draw that the dog feels, but to teach them how to cope in a very unconventional canine world. It's a really common misplaced belief that Our dogs, we've created it. A lot of people often feel that they've created the issues within their dogs. And to a certain degree, even I look back at my own journey with Scrunch, there is things that I did that, yes, I absolutely caused that dog to behave in the way that she did. But that doesn't mean that we should be pointing the finger at and we should be blamed, because often it's from lack of knowledge or just ignorance about what dog ownership is, and also what our dog is predisposed to, and being proactive in how we rear them and how we socialize them to avoid them developing problematic behavior. For me, blaming somebody and pointing the finger at them for their dog's behavior isn't going to empower them. It's not going to help them move forward. It's not going to get them to have a better relationship by judging them. My ethos in training dogs and people is very much the same. It's about focusing on what we want them to do, as opposed to constantly telling them what we don't want. We want to focus on how can we fix this issue? How can we build confidence? How can we empower the owner? How can we give this dog a skill set that we can draw on in the real world to ensure that they're safe and that we can live a fuller life for them? Often you'll find that there is a strong connection between the human's response and the dog. So if you are a person that feels anxious, that's going to that's going to go into your dog. If you feel if you're a person that gets upset or emotional about your dog's behavior, that's going to affect the subsequent response the dog gives you. A huge part of the way in which I perceive reactivity and overcoming challenges is not only to do the dog training, but it's also to support and empower and give the owner skills, whether it's being more mindful of their own breathing pattern when they get anxious, being mindful of how they look and perceive at the world, and thinking about reframing the dog in their mind and the language they use to define the dog. And certainly to ditch the label of reactivity, to change the way in which they look at the dog, and therefore the results that they can have from their dogs. There has been so many success stories in my career working with dogs that are deemed reactive, but there's definitely one that really does articulate what can be done with a dog that's deemed reactive, and that's the story of Patricia and Spike. So Patricia is one of my longtime students who came to me first with her miniature schnauzer, Spike. And Spike is a dog that formerly was labeled as reactive. And Patricia came to me, she contacted me randomly after being thrown out of, I think it was 4 training facilities before she found me. And I can remember clear as day her traveling up walking up the drive. Patricia always used to get cabs to come in for her lessons, so she used to get a taxi to come. So she was dropped off by the taxi, had her backpack on her, walked up the drive, and I was a bit taken aback as to there she was with her little mini schnauzer. And I remember the first lesson that I had with her clear as day, and in truth, I was giving her information about how to help her dog and things to do. And in truth, I wasn't sure whether she was actually understanding what I wanted her to do, because she was just taking it all in. And I remember going in thinking, I'm not sure I was going to ever see Patricia again, but the next subsequent lesson that she booked, she had mastered everything that I'd advised her to do. But as it came out, it actually transpired that there was a lot of misinformation from Patricia, and now we joke about it, that the reason she was looking so perplexed is because what I was advising her to do was totally alien to the information that she'd been told before. She had been told to correct the dog and that he was being bad and she was being naughty, and I was saying he's fearful, he needs confidence building, you need to think about creating distance. And it was just that whole alien notion to how I was looking at the dog and the problems that he was supposedly had, that was throwing her. She was like, this is totally different to what I'd been previously advised. And Patricia came to me regularly, and she came to my training classes in London, and she would come every single week to my Monday nighters, and each week we would work on confidence building and skill building and teaching Spike those core elements of a solid sit, solid down, and focus and recall, and we work on his confidence, to the point of where slowly I broached the prospect of, actually, he's so good, you could probably do competitions with him. And at first, Patricia didn't think that was ever possible. because of the label that he'd been given of being reactive and a problem dog. And I explained to her that everything that he would have to encounter, i.e. being in proximity of several hundred dogs, and he would be asked to do a stay amongst other dogs, I assured her, with probably a little bit of foolishness, that I felt we could do it, we could overcome the challenges. And in truth, Spike was so concerned about other dogs, there was part of me that was, I thought that I'd almost, set myself up to fail. But, I like a challenge. I like to deal with dogs that are that unconventional. And I also believe that anything is possible. And we both of us embarked on this process of building Spike's confidence up and obviously teaching him core skills. And it just so happened that it sparked a flame within Patricia and Spike, and it built his confidence up so dramatically and her skill set as a dog owner that not only did he go on to compete successfully in competitive obedience, but he actually represented our area in one of the most prestigious competitions at Crufts, and he actually won that. And he actually won another prestigious event called the British Competitive Obedience Society Grand Prix Final. And he's turned into an absolute model citizen. And it's one of the relationship I have with Spike and Patricia as a result of that is one that I really cherish, because she allowed me to, she trusted me. She put a great level of trust in me. And again, as I said, it was a very privileged position to be in, and one that I took really, really personally, that I wanted her to achieve her best. The stuff that she achieved competitively was the icing on the cake. It was the Disney outcome to the result. But the more importantly, she went from having a dog that she didn't relish, she didn't have the joy of owning, to one that she absolutely adored. And she was able to literally travel the country with him, and she flies abroad for her work, and she takes Spike with her, and she travels and trains and travels in public, and he is an absolute model citizen. And that, for me, was the greatest achievement that we had. And it's one story of a reactive dog that most definitely came good, that I'm incredibly proud of.